good afternoon. Welcome to our Visual Management Series webinars. I want to thank everybody for taking some time out of their day, wishing everybody a happy spring. Today we're going to be talking about how to make standard work a way of life, and it's really going to be talking a lot about visual communication and integrating standard work into the communications that we utilize every day. My name is Rhonda Colvera. Visual Workplace has been presenting, we have a 6-part series of webinars, and I'll kind of give you an overview on those in just a moment. But today we're going to be talking about standard work. I'm here with Mark Thompson. He's driving the back end.
Hello, everybody.
And so I'm going to let Mark let you know how we're going to handle questions for the webinars.
Yeah, okay. So on the right-hand side or at the top of the screen, depending on how you're viewing this or what you're viewing it on, there's a menu that slides out. When you slide it out, there's a section there that has either the question section or the chat section. Feel free to ask in either one. I'll be monitoring both throughout the webinar, and we will address them at the end of the presentation.
All right. Again, thank you all for joining us. Just to give you a little bit of overview, my name is Rhonda Colvera. I've been with Visual Workplace for over 20 years. We've been helping multiple companies implement visual management, help to create an organized workplace. So we're doing a lot of interesting things with a lot of our customers, and we wanted to take an opportunity and share some of those coaching opportunities that we've had with you. Hopefully you'll have some takeaways, some ideas that you can share with your team. Also, just as on a side note, we are going to today's Thursday, probably by Monday, we should be sending out everybody a link to a landing page. And from that landing page, you'll be able to download the PowerPoint presentation with the speaker notes. You're welcome to use that as your own. Use some of the material, incorporate it into your training material, use it to share with others on your team. It doesn't matter to me. We're all about sharing ideas, so you're welcome to have access to that. Then you'll also be able, from that landing page, to listen to the audio webcast that we're doing here today. So again, if you want some of the information from my perspective, you can listen to it that way. So lots of options, definitely something we encourage you to share with others. You know, these ideas, you can turn them into your own. And again, we're just wanting to take an opportunity in a short period of time, which probably will be about 40 minutes today, with some questions at the end. So as Mark said, please feel free to submit some questions on anything that you have. We're going to talk to you just a little bit about today's webinar. So here you'll see this is the list of the webinars that we have in our visual management series. Today we're talking about standard work. The next webinar will be from chaos to order and how to use tool shadows. We've got a tremendous amount of products that you can use for tool control, and we'll give you some suggestions on how to implement tool control along with some products. And then you'll see the other webinars, and we do these webinars each month, typically the first Thursday of the month at the same time at 2 p.m. So look for our website. Mark will send out some email updates, so if you're wanting to look for that, you're welcome to join us again or share it with others in your network. Just for those that might be attending for the first time, Visual Workplace has been in business for over 20 years in providing visual communication products for industrial workplaces. What you see here on the far left is our mobile in-house sign shop. That is the product that we started with first when the business started, and it really gives you an opportunity to create your own signage and do your own customization, which again will definitely lead into developing standard work. For others, we have the ability to create signs for you if the sign shop doesn't fit your needs at this time. And then we also have some other do-it-yourself products that you can use, and we'll talk a little bit about those as we go through. But first, what I want to do is give you just a brief overview of what the contents of the webinar will be for today. We're going to start out by talking about standard work and defining it. It seems pretty straightforward, but hopefully you can take some of this language and weave that into the conversations that you're having with your team. And really, you know, we do the same thing here. We're always talking about standard work. You know, for a lot of people, the labor market is very tight. We may have turnover and change, and so we're always trying to develop ways to standardize our work, share them with others, and improve, and that's really where we're going to get to. Next, in the webinar today, we'll talk about some best practice ideas, and these are real applications that we've developed with our customers, and then we'll have a couple of tools that we'll talk about as well. So again, all in all, about 35 to 40 minutes today. So first, what we want to do is talk about standard work and the components. And basically, standardized work consists of 3 elements. First is your takt time, which is the rate at which products must be made in order to meet the customer demand. It's not how fast we can make them, but depending on what our customer needs from us and working backwards, that is how we develop our takt time. So again, it makes us conscious of the capacity that we have available. Next, we look at operational sequence, and that's the precise work order in which an operator performs tasks within a given takt time. So again, we always want to look for opportunities to standardize that work so we have repeatability and continuity with onboarding new employees. And thirdly, as a component of standard work, we look at inventory, and these are the materials needed to produce the product required by our customer, and that's a very important part of the process, is making sure that we have the availability of the inventory needed to produce the products for our customers. So those are just 3 general components of standardized work, and what we're always trying to do is look for opportunities to apply standard work to these 3 categories. Now we want to talk a little bit about why do we have to create these standards for the categories that we just talked about. Well, what we want to do is we want to try and eliminate missing information. We don't want people to make assumptions about what they need to do or how they need to do it. It then forces us, by developing these standards, we have to agree on what the standard is. We can't have a standard for one person in a particular process and a different standard for another person doing the same thing. So it forces us to come together to talk about the opportunities, the ideas that each of the team members have, and how we should accomplish creating that standard work in order to meet our takt time. Another tremendous value in standardized work is reducing injuries. Everyone is focused on safety, and that, for most of us, that is the most important part of our day, is making sure that we operate safely. Well, standards help you do that. And again, communicating those standards and making sure that everybody understands, such as the personal protective equipment required within your facility, or the safe ways to operate machinery. But again, it's all about safety awareness and making sure everybody is aware of those standards that keep us safe. Talked briefly a little bit about training efficiency. Standardized work is critically important to onboarding new employees. We want to make sure that we have continuity, and especially that continuity will help us to create a quality product that is consistent for our customers. So again, these are all very common sense things, but most importantly, and this is what I talk about the most when I talk about standards, and a lot of people get really worried about, what if it's not right? What if the standard isn't quite right and there's better ways to do things? It's like, well, that's fantastic. That is how we all should be thinking, because once we set a standard, we should immediately be looking for a better way to improve the standard. So it gives us that baseline for improvement. But if it's not standard and it's not documented, we're all over the place, and it's really hard to implement sustainable improvements without a standard. So if nothing else, repeat to your team. Standards are a baseline for improvement. We just need to start somewhere. Don't be afraid to make changes, and again, encourage people to come back and give you ideas and help us to expose problems. And that's really where we get down to is, that baseline for improvement, exposing problems, and making things better as we go. So again, as we talk about these different things, you'll find you'll just want to try and use this in your language when you're talking with everybody, because it really helps to create a common language within your facility. And again, don't be afraid to market the standard work ideas that we're talking about here today. I'm a huge advocate of marketing for continuous improvement. So any information that you can share, in your break rooms or in training opportunities, you really want to try and bring these advantages for standard work into the conversation. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about creating some standards in some of the things that we navigate. And here personally at our facility, we struggle with recycled materials. It just seems like somebody walks by, throws something in a container or in a gaylord, and there's not a lot of attention. And so for us, it really helps. An example here is what we've done to try and reinforce the standards. I feel very passionate about recycling. It reduces our overall costs, but when not everybody in the company is marching to the same tune, it can be a real pain in the hind end. So again, we're always looking for ways to standardize, and we'll talk today a little bit and how visuals can help us to follow the standards that we have in place, and that's you'll see more of that as we step through. The question now becomes, where can we apply standard work? Well, it can be applied to many different areas, and it's your challenge to keep asking the question, is this an opportunity to standardize what we're supposed to be doing? Should we have a standard work instruction? Should we have a visual in place? Should we incorporate this into training? And we'll go through that in some examples here today. But again, it's thinking about all the different areas where you can apply standard work. And first, what we're going to talk about is navigation, and that may seem rather silly, but navigation is an important part of our culture. We rely on navigation on our roadways and our airports and when we're traveling. Well, we should expect the same type of navigation or the same type of standards in our facilities. We tend to take that for granted, but it's a really important part when we're bringing new employees on board. It leaves an impression with your customers and your vendors that you're paying close attention to this detail, not just for the work instruction for the product that you produce, but with the overall processes within your facility. Next, we're going to look at the opportunity to standardize evacuation. When we talk about navigation, we don't want to forget about the evacuation plans. Our safety teams spend a great deal of time developing these plans and translating them into standard work, and then their challenge is to communicate that to everybody. And how is that done? And so here we show a couple of examples where we've got an evacuation plan that's a visual, but it's produced with glow-in-the-dark vinyl. So if there is a lights-out situation, you still can see, and you're in the facility, you can still see the evacuation route. And then for a lot of companies, they'll have meeting places outside the facility for different groups. So again, to make sure that we've got accountability for everybody that was in the plant. So visuals are a really important way to communicate navigation in that evacuation circumstance. Next, we want to talk a little bit about wayfinding. Again, this is what we were just talking about, putting in that detail so that new employees, customers, vendors, or even your leadership team that may not be, at your location all the time, that they can navigate through your facility without asking any questions. And again, it's finding a balance between, oh my gosh, this is over the top, and I can't find my way around anywhere. And it's not just so much about, sometimes you have a lot of facilities where they've had additions and things are moved around. And so it's really important to communicate how to navigate your facility. And again, it's an attention to detail that is really noticeable by others because we tend to, go to work every day and we don't pay attention because we know how to get around or where we need to be. But again, it's something that you should give some consideration to. Next, we're going to talk about standard work as related to 5S organization. And again, many of us are using 5S as a tool for organizing our workplaces. And I often find that organizations struggle to sustain their organization and cleanliness, but there's a couple of tools that you might find useful, and here's a couple of examples. What you see here on the left is a 5S board that is located within a department, and if you can look on the right-hand side of this visual, you'll see some index cards, and they just use a time card holder, and what they do is they've color-coded cleaning tasks that need to be done on a daily, monthly, and weekly basis. And so it's very easy to see what should be done, because when the task is completed, the card is flipped over. So supervisors or team leaders or operation managers, they can walk by and at a glance, they can tell if we're staying on top of our required cleaning activities for a particular area. What they also did is they incorporated the contents of the monthly audit, the standard work layout, any action items that need to be addressed, and suggestions that any of their team might have. So they really put some thought into this, and it worked very well because they were slipping and they weren't keeping up on the daily 5S, daily, weekly, and monthly 5S activities. So it was very helpful. Next, you'll see this Kamishibai board. Again, it's designed to identify daily tasks, and as they're completed, there's a card or a signal that indicates the status. So at a glance, you're able to see very easily if we're maintaining and meeting the standards for workplace organization in this example. Other ideas, just some marketing you see over here on the left, just reminding people what the 5S's are can be very important. And then also, if you're utilizing red tag areas, this is one of my most favorite visuals because it goes beyond just saying put your red tag items here. It tells you exactly what you're supposed to do and how we're supposed to disposition it, because that's where I've seen a lot of companies, they've got these junk piles, campsites of things that nobody knows what to do with. So this kind of gives you some parameters and standardizes what the disposition process is supposed to be. Next, I have another example to show you. Again, this is creating a centralized visual to display all the requirements for 5S. And again, it utilizes maps, it puts in the standard work, your audits. They've included some safety information here to reiterate their safety standards. So again, this type of board can be something that you might find useful if you're struggling to sustain or maintain some of the workplace organization activities in your facility. Next, we're going to talk about inventory control and how we can use standard work to communicate different aspects of inventory control. Here in this next example, this was a company that was a supplier for Toyota, and they were coming through for an audit, and they're walking through their finished goods area, and they're not understanding, if they're ahead or behind. So they went one step further, and so at a glance, you could tell that 3 skids minimums needed to be in their finished goods area at a max of 5. So it helped to communicate at a glance where they were at. Next, you'll see on the right, this was a really simple problem that they had. They had a material handler that was replenishing corrugated boxes for finished goods, and they kept running out. And you've got this guy running around, and he's kind of scattered and not very methodical in what they're doing. So they just added some floor tape as an indicator when the material needed to be replenished. And it was just a simple idea. The boxes were already stored there. They just added some tape, and at a glance now we could see when we were needed to have replenishment, again trying to avoid a stock out situation or some downtime in their production process. So again, those were just a couple of ideas about inventory control. Now I want to talk a little bit about how we can implement standard work with process control. Again, these are just simple things. My favorite is this image here on the right. They had skids that were constantly stacked too high. They were a safety hazard, and they were an obstruction to the 5S cleaning supplies behind. So again, telling everybody not to stack the skids too high or to only stack them 10 high. It just wasn't working. So they created a pokey yoke, which prevented them from stacking things so high. And this is that mindset that you really want to try and encourage your team to have. And that's why I think these pictures, they do a nice job in going, oh gosh, yeah, that really helps to, we have a standard in place, but we need some help reinforcing that standard. Same thing here with the image on the left. You've got a hold area, but the problem was not everything was labeled, and so you didn't know what products were going to be in that area. So they're just looking for just small, slight visual cues to make sure the things that are supposed to happen actually do. In this next image, this was a project that we helped Pepsi with, and they were having to test products as they were coming off their production line, and they needed to test 72 bottles. Well, they kept losing track, and the area wasn't organized, so we created a simple display for them where they could keep track and place the bottles right onto their cart, and they knew when they got everything was full, there were no more circles displayed, they'd met the testing requirements. So again, just something really simple to help them be more efficient in their processes. This next one, a little more complicated, and again, I wanted to show you the differences in something being very simple to something being a little bit more intense. This was a work order process for Janssen, and you can see it has some complexity, but they were struggling because the work orders weren't being processed in a timely manner. They weren't being routed properly the way that they should so that they could be executed. So they created a visual management board, but not only did they, as you can see down below, they can write up there when the work orders are assigned, but at a glance, you can see the process at all times. So this really helped them to reduce the backlog of work orders for one of their maintenance areas. Here again, another visual management tool used for process control. And again, this is more for scheduling and doing the operator checks because it wasn't happening the way that they needed, and they were using 8.5 by 11. It was just kind of a mess, and so they made a visual display that everybody can see. You could see Monday through Sunday in some cases, and it held them accountable to make sure that they were following the standard with regards to their operator checks. Now again, here's another example of something very simple. Prior to the totes that you see here, they were just using corrugated boxes, and they were mixing good parts with scrap parts, and there was they had to go through containment issues and sorting, and so they used color and some simple visual communications and eliminated non-conforming material being mixed with work in process. So it worked very well for them. Next, I want to talk a little bit just about safety. Here's some examples. And again, for each of you, you probably have different safety, personal protection equipment requirements in your facility. We've helped a lot of companies really try and reinforce that. It's not enough for most companies just to tell people in their onboarding training, hey, you need to wear safety glasses, or you need to have steel-toed shoes, or you have to wear gloves, or different types of other protective equipment. So again, it's a battle. I hate to say it that way, but again, it's important to keep everybody safe, but it's also important to make sure that everybody understands what the requirements are with regards to safety standards. So just a quick idea there that you may need some help with. So what we want to do is, if we want to make a strong impact with standard work, we really need to incorporate standard work into our daily lives. And that is, in our language and how we talk to our supervisors and team meetings. We want to create transparency in the organization, and that's why there's an opportunity to develop standard work for your leadership team. And I'll just give you a couple of ideas for that. It's sometimes it's a little uncomfortable to, create that transparency. So, if you're a team leader, it's like, well, you know what you need to do on a given day, but are you getting it done? And so here's a couple of, real simple samples or examples of ways to control that and make it visual. And again, if you're ahead or behind, it's like, well, you didn't get it done today, but come in tomorrow swinging, and we're going to get right after the things that we didn't get done yesterday. So it's just an opportunity to, we want our production teams to utilize standard work. It can be very helpful to create standard work tools for our leadership teams as well. Again, here are just a couple of simple examples. And, if you need some help, we certainly can help you map that out if that's something that you're interested in. Next, I want to just talk about, some of the benefits, the impact of standard work. And we talked about, some of the advantages. Well, really what you're going to find is if you start to, focus on standard work in your facility, looking at the examples that I showed you today, you can see where this starts to become a foundation for visual management. It really helps to create a disciplined culture. We start to talk about, improvement and exposing problems and utilizing error proofing so that we can prevent problems from reoccurring. It drives our problem-solving activities for our teams, and if you've got CI teams or you're doing Kaizen events, standardized work really can help drive some of that activity and those priorities. And most of all, it really helps us to reduce variation, which is what we're trying to achieve with our products that we're sending to our customers, eliminating that variation. As far as tools, as you can see in the examples that I showed you, a lot of things, were tied to signage. And again, I think that's where, you may have written work instructions and standards that may be in Word docs and binders, but using custom printed signs is a way to reinforce those standards, and that's really what we want to try to get to, is making sure that the standards we have in place, so we can't plaster the walls with this information, we can strategically place reminders to reinforce those standards that we already have. As I mentioned, Visual Workplace, we have the ability to do custom print just about anything that you need. We'll work with you if you need help in design. We've got a team of designers. And for those of you who may not have seen our catalog, we've got a lot of standard signage and products in there. But for most people, if you drive down, an industrial park, not one company does the same thing as another. So the things that you need and the information you need to convey is going to be very different. So we've taken a very active approach to customization. Anything that you see in our catalog, any size, any material, if you need that message customized, we're going to charge you the same price that you're going to see for that size and material in the catalog. You shouldn't have to pay setup fees. You shouldn't have to pay, you want extra colors, you want this image. It doesn't matter to us. We want to make sure that you get the custom message that you need and you're not going to overpay for that. And so that's a kind of a bold move in the signage industry, because that's where people tend to make a lot of money is, on the custom side, because they're like, oh gosh, we're going to have to do that special for you. It's like, nah, not really. So we really try and take a different approach to that when it comes to customization. Another possibility for you, as I mentioned, is our mobile in-house sign shop. If you're looking to do some of this yourself, you can save a tremendous amount of money doing some of the signage yourself. And again, we provide you with the materials, the training, the technical support, templates, all the different supplies that you would need. So if you're interested, let us know and we can do a web demo and we can take you through that pretty quickly. But, walk through your facility and look at the amount of communications that you have out there. It's truly important, and you should have a way to make changes, easily and inexpensively. And so we're one of the few sign companies out there that will print it for you or give you the tools to let you do it yourself. So it gives you options. Next, I want to talk about, this is just an idea that I like to share with customers. We've got a template, and if you're interested in, I've talked a little bit about marketing and making sure that, we promote continuous improvement. This is a great idea to put in your break rooms, in your conference rooms, team meeting area. As you're doing, Kaizen events or, continuous improvement events, this is a 24 by 36 inch poster on foam core that we can print for you. We've got the template, so if you've got some information that you'd like to share and communicate with your team, we can put this information together for you, and we'd love to help you with that if we could. If you have would like to take a deeper dive into standard work, we have these two videos are available on our website. There is a preview of the video. These videos are produced by Utana, and they've done a really nice job in communicating and making them interesting, because the last thing you want is a video that's outdated and it's not even relevant to what you're doing. So if you're looking for some resources for your training materials, like I said, you're welcome to use anything that I have in this presentation or the PowerPoint, but if you're looking for a deeper dive, this would be a good resource for you as well. They've done a nice job on that. So we're just about wrapping up. Again, today was a webinar just talking about standard work and how we can incorporate that language into our everyday life and use visuals to help reinforce some of the standards that we have in place. Our next webinar is going to be next month. I didn't have the date in front of me. But Mark will get that on the website and we'll get that teed up. But it should be the first Thursday in June 6th. So, Mark just has given me the,
I won't be here.
He's going to be out of town, so I may have to get a different backseat driver to help me with that. So anyway, I'm just one more slide here. Like I said, we're going to send out a landing page. There'll be a couple other documents that you can download. There'll be a return on investment checklist. So if you want to look at the sign shop, we can help you do a payback analysis on some of the signage that you might be buying, because you're probably going to save about 75% if you're buying things from an outside source. And then there's a template there for the Kaizen poster. So at this point, you've got my email. If you have any questions, if you need some coaching, some ideas, please don't hesitate to reach out. We love to help others. Share ideas. We've got lots of pictures. If you're looking for training material, again, I have more PowerPoint presentations than I know what I'll ever use in my life. And we try to share those with anyone that is in need. But I'm going to turn this over to Mark and see if he has any questions.
I got a question from Mark with a C. Good name.
Not Mark with a T.
Not Mark with a T, okay. He asked a very interesting question. What type of visuals do we use here at Visual Workplace for this type of
Well, that's a good question. Mark could probably answer that. What we should be doing and what we are doing are usually two different things, as I'm sure it is for most of you. But we use Kanbans, we use floor graphics. You saw my example that we use on just for recycling and just navigating that. We have safety awareness, safety glass requirements and PPE requirements that we use in different places. Again, we're trying to, we too want to eliminate the questions. We just hired a new person, onboarding him into our operations team, and he's just looking around going, oh my gosh, there's so much to learn. And we're reminded again how important it is to have some of this information available. Now, granted, some of our standard work is a work instruction in a binder. How do I ship something, via a carrier? So there's things that we have to read and pull out. But again, you know, where does the incoming material go? Well, we use floor tape. The UPS driver he missed taking a package one time, and he's like, well, sorry, I didn't see that there. Well, we had to fix that. You know, make sure that, you know, all the material that is going to be shipped out UPS, the driver, it's all in one spot, it's organized. We do daily 5S activities, you know, to try and keep continuing to improve. But I use, Mark, I think you would agree, but the language that I talked about today, I try to use in my own personal business here at Visual Workplace. So we use it. It's not easy. It's, you know, we're all human, but it helps us set a standard and it helps us to improve, and that's ultimately what we want to do.
Angela asked a question. She's got different cells that are working with different companies, she says, and she was saying how the areas she'd like to label based upon the company that they work with.
Yep.
And she's wondering, like, where do you go to find logos and stuff like that to use?
Okay.
Like, how do you incorporate that with printing materials?
We can help you with that. Some companies, like we are working with Adidas. Holy moly. They have their own Adidas font. We had to tell them that we would not use their Adidas font for any other customer. We wouldn't use their logo. We wouldn't take pictures of anything. So some people are very particular, and we always respect that. Now, Ford, if they're one of your customers, and you know, I see this in a lot of automotive plants where they're building, you know, a frame assembly for Ford, and so they'll have an F-150 with the Ford logo hanging above the production area. Ford doesn't care about that. We're not selling and making money off of that sign and taking anything away from Ford. It's a visual management product. So most companies don't care, which in turn, we have a million logos. If we don't have it, we can usually figure out how to get it. So we can help you is the answer to your question. Because again, you know, John Deere, years ago, the deer was like jumping up, and then they changed the logo, and now the deer was jumping down, and everything had to change. So it's just silly stuff that we try to help you keep up on. Yeah,
even our FedEx and UPS shipping area where we place our boxes and stuff like that.
Yeah, we use the UPS and the FedEx logo, and it's fine. It's just, it helps us give visual management. So hopefully that answered your question.
That's it for questions.
Okay. Well, again, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Please reach out if you need some ideas, some coaching, some products, samples, demos. We've got way more than I have time to talk about today. We just launched a new website, so there's lots of new things out there. So those of you that registered and requested samples, those will probably go out Monday, Tuesday next week, and we'll get those all packaged up and to you. And someone from our team will reach out to you and see if you've got any questions. So, all right, thank you, and have an amazing day.